Ladies and gentlemen, the Kids in the Room podcast. Kids in the Room podcast.
That's right. That's right.
Brought to you by Move Faces TV. Let's go. Woo! All right. Hey guys, welcome to the Kids in the Room podcast. Today we've got my friend Josh Jacobs on the show. That's right. What's going on, Josh? How you doing?
My man, T-Money.
All right.
Everything's good, man. How are you?
Oh man, just living the dream.
Yeah, you all right? You're all right,
Living the
or you
dream.
good?
Living the dream, man. Living the
I
dream.
see you just like straight up. See that you're just straight up Game of Thrones, Mickey Mouse's head.
Hell
What's
yeah.
with that?
Hell yeah. You know, this shit was like from like, I thought it was a really cool fucking shirt, so I just picked it up. I think it was it Uniqlo
It is
or
dope.
some shit? Yeah. Like to go to that little
I
store.
like
It's
it.
pretty cool. Get some edgy stuff. All right.
I feel it.
Yeah.
I fucks with it.
You
Fucks with it.
You got it. What kind of hat you rocking with right there?
Dude, this is a controversial hat. Not gonna lie. So I'm from Florida, and obviously you got to pay homage to where you grew up. And I bought this at downtown Fort Lauderdale because when you have red hair and you have pale ass skin, you get sunburned pretty easily. So I found a hat that I thought was cool, and it's controversial because I don't know how much in line I am with Florida politics anymore since having moved out to California for the past 8 or 9 years. But all my friends are there. All my family's still there. Not a 1 ounce of me changes my opinion or my thoughts on them. But, you know, being out on the West Coast, I think I gravitate more towards my beliefs over here. So,
Yeah, man. I think the same thing for me, man. Like when you move different places, like your views begin to be screwed or even, change after a while because it's just through influence and just different eyes. And I think it's good for us to like move around and to, learn those different things. But I think really like, definitely living in different places totally changes it, especially when you're coming from red states to blue states and blue states to red states and et cetera. It does, it changes the vibe in your opinion for sure. Yeah.
yeah, and for me it's interesting because I always stay neutral. I don't really take a side. And that's controversial in itself from feedback that I've received, where it's like, you can't be neutral because if you're neutral, then you'll continue to allow both parties to continue to flow through you. But my take on it is you need a moderator and you need someone in the room to be able to see both sides and connect the dots. I think a perfect example of that was on I forget the name of the show, but it was with Killer Mike on Netflix, and he put together a super band just to prove the point of how you can make the most controversial song in the world, bring in the most diverse crowd, and listen to each artist. And each artist was an extremist. There was a white supremacist artist. There was um, a bisexual artist. There was a uh, uh, non-binary, not like it was anything you could imagine. And Killer Mike's point was, I'm gonna put all these artists on stage, and we're gonna try to use the power of music to have everybody in this room feeling like they're connected at one time. I'm not gonna spoil what happened, but check it out. I'll find it. It was fascinating to watch. So I don't know. I avoid conflict. I will say that, but I also know how to take a stand when I am a firm believer with enough concrete evidence on my point.
Nah, man, I'm the same way, man. Like in the same form, and I know you weren't saying like you were like fucking like, I'm in the middle of white supremacists, but or
Yeah,
especially being a Jewish guy yourself, of
But
course, that's not really what you were saying. But just to clarify with the audience, that's not what he's saying, all right? But I'm just saying, I don't want people to get ideas with cancel culture. These guys are out here, man. They're canceling everything. They're axing shit off.
It's insane.
I'm just like, no, I totally get it, man. Like for me too, man. Like, I like to try to keep the peace. I'm a humanitarian, right? I believe, the betterment, what's better for humans in general, right? And everybody has their own view. And it's like so many times people try to box themselves into groups. And I think America is a very tribal country, right? if you will.
100%.
And it's kind of breeded that way with that colonialism. And I know I say this a lot. People probably get tired because I say this a lot, but it is this colonialism that exists in the United States, where it's just like everybody feels like they need to stick into these groups, but that's just not
Yeah.
reality. People have been
No.
mixing for a long time in the United States, and they continuously will. Right? This is what's going to happen. It's going to be just like Latin America. It's just going to happen. I know some people might not want to hear it, but mixing is not going to stop. And I don't think it necessarily should stop or anything else like that. People should do whatever they want. We're all humans. But I think the thing is there's this push to keep these groups
Is it too
going.
much freedom?
Oh, I don't know if it's too much freedom. I don't think it's that at all. I think it's the foundations of colonialism in the United States is just still sticky here. Whatever
Yeah.
the English brought over here, and these groups and these supremacy separations from the lower to the bottom, it causes everybody to group and try to have this ownership into groups. So then certain people can't be who they want to be. You know, you have Obama who
And
has
it's
to stick
you're
into
right.
himself into a box, even though he doesn't belong in a Pacific box. You have Kamala Harris who doesn't belong in a Pacific box, but feels like she has to be on a box because America
Representative
says
of a
you
box.
got to need a box, and the one box needs more groups or needs more votes, or the other, a group might not accept them, so that it's easier to just sit in with the other group by default and play the role. It just keeps on going on and on. Meghan Markle, the same thing. She's, of both of these cultures, European and African, but she feels, obviously, or I don't know if she feels. I'm not going to speak for her, but I feel like people feel like they need to box her. They've got to check her. Like,
Yeah.
oh, she knows what the
Yeah.
experience is like, growing up in rural South Carolina. Like no. She might have some
I'll be honest.
references.
I didn't even know she was
Mulatto?
Catholic.
I thought she
Yeah.
was white.
I had no idea until she said that. I watched the Oprah interview and I looked at Diana and I was like, really? And she said, yeah. And then like immediately I like started Googling it and like I looked at everything. And then it was like, oh, okay, like 100%. Like this is crazy where this is about to head. And then when she revealed the remarks and just the reaction that she did, did you see the interview? I don't want to ruin
I
it
didn't
for
even
you.
see the interview. I didn't want to watch it because I just saw so much social
It felt
media
like the LeBron
BS.
interview when he went to Miami.
Oh, explain. What was it like? Would you watch? I didn't watch it yet, so tell me more about what was your take on it. Like, what'd you see?
My take on it is, I mean, you just broke down America and colonism and colonizing, but in the UK, it's fascinating because it's pure royalty and growing up in that and becoming a product of that. And the crazy thing is tying it all together on how our conversation even started from like growing up in Florida in my hat to like becoming a chameleon and adapting to your environment and your surroundings, and then breaking that even down into the boxes that you're forced into. When zooming out of that, our conversation and bringing it all together, when comparing it to the Oprah interview, that's crazy because Prince Harry, right? Harry or Henry? It's Harry.
Harry.
Harry, Harry is just at a point in his life where he loves this woman to death. That's his ride or die, and she feels the exact same way about him, but they're breaking away from a piece of the family and the values and something that he did grow up around, but they're splitting apart from the obligation and the job and the responsibilities that come with it because they're at a point in their lives where they're so in sync with who they are, they don't want to do that anymore. And it was just glass shattering, $1 billion ornaments falling from the ceiling of a moment for the entire UK and pretty much the entire world for a second because that's never been done. So seeing them take on that amount of pressure and just seeing the backlash that came with it, like her getting threatened and death threats, um, it was just eye opening. I mean, there's no other way to say it. I mean, it was eye opening, and um, I fully empathize with both. Like, how could you, first of all, trying to being in a relationship that is multicultural, I totally understand. Um, Always keeping an open mind to really learn the foundation of who your partner is by stepping into that household for the first time and meeting their family. and learning their family values and their traditions. Um, I would argue that if you don't do that soon enough in your relationship, if it is a multicultural relationship or interfaithful or interreligious or um, interfaithful relationship, then you will continue to grow like this from the honeymoon phase. But then once you live together and you start to learn about each other's values and foundations and cores, it can get like this, like a DNA strain, but then it could easily split if you don't identify those core values and those family values. So it's just fascinating to see. Um, it's just a new it's an adaptation to a more transparent world that I do firmly believe we're getting towards. I mean, I see it in my job every day. I feel like companies have to be more transparent now with conversations around diversity, equity, and inclusion. You can't force it. If someone says, "Hey, I want to hire X amount of um, Asian Pacific candidates," or "I want to hire Y amount of Black candidates," it's not about checking off a box and having a number validated. It's about assuring visibility and assuring that the intent is 100% there. So yeah, that's my take. You on? Yeah,
Wow, that's a lot. That's a deep take. I mean, you know, I don't really know too much about the whole scenario. I didn't watch it. I just saw some, some random clips. I didn't really feel like, getting involved with that. I think it's just like it's just media for the most part. There's so much stuff going on. Everybody has their own lives and their own trials and tribulations. Not putting down the fact that her weight and the things that she might be going through and the whole family and Harry, et cetera, might be going through may be heavy, because changing things for something that's been going on forever, for a while is a big thing. But I would also add into there is like, the whole, the whole English, UK, the Queen thing, that was one of the first strongholds of colonialism.
yeah,
United States is built off of, English colonialism, right? Where Latin America is built off of Spanish colonialism, excuse me, and then also, Portuguese, which is in Brazil. These are colonialistic places, right? And if you look at United States in general or the Americas in general, it's all colonialized, right? By different
yeah,
European countries, leads or heads, right? It's not the basic people, the average people. It's not the average Joe. It was the elites who had these
yeah,
plans, and they had these soldiers, and they had these logics that they used, and they used their forces, and they had this copy and paste strategy that they went on to these other countries and just used that to mentally break down people and to take power. And they used religion, they used mental slavery. You didn't beat somebody and say your name is Toby, for example, 100 times for no reason, and tell someone they
yeah,
couldn't read a book for no reason. And the thing is that what's always funny is the United States is like United States has this narrative where they push this narrative that like there's like all like these there's this African American type of thing that only exists, in the United States, and it's a big thing, and slavery is a big thing in America. When in fact that's so false. So when you start talking about things like
yeah,
African diaspora, you have to go to Latin America has the highest amount of Africans that were brought into the Americas in general. Right now, it's a lot of it is mostly it's just blended in with the Spaniards and the natives, and then also with the Africans. So it's a little bit blended out. And then of course there were certain parts of history throughout the Southeast. I mean throughout South America where it started getting too dark, meaning that everybody was mixed more with
yeah.
Africans. So they started inviting a bunch of Europeans over to lighten up the blood, if you will. And this happened in South America. This happened Argentina, Brazil. This happened in a lot of countries, great countries. But this happened. Anybody can look that up. But the thing of the matter is, I mean, and even when you start talking about, you go back to Mexico. You go back to Mexico. You go to Veracruz. Who were some of the first people who helped break the Spanish rule? You had Yanga. These people were all
Yeah,
Africans. These people
yeah,
helped free Veracruz. All those people and all those slaves, they all existed into what we now call Mexico, right? And so everybody's got some sense of that ancestry when they do a DNA test, but some people don't know, some people do, and you can't visually just tell who's got what. You just can't, you know.
I just learned. You know what's crazy? I just learned the other day that there was Irish immigrants who went over to Mexico during what was it? The I don't remember what time period this was, but I was just reading about it. And when reading further into it, I was like, wow, this is why there's a heavy, dense, yeah, like yeah, like Canelo's, like a lot of Mexican pelirrojos who were in like, yeah,
It's also from a lot of Spaniards,
yeah.
right? A lot of Spaniards did have red hair, right?
There's
Because
also a lot of Jews in Mexico too.
there were a lot of Jews in Mexico. A lot of Jews, went into Mexico. Even there were a lot of Jews in Portugal too, as well. Actually, my name Tavares is actually a Portuguese name, but originally brought in by the Jews.
Wow,
Yeah, deep, right?
deep. You
Deep.
can't learn that on
You can't do
Ancestry.com.
that, baby. Yeah, but that's a lot of there's a lot of Spanish and Portuguese names and terms that were brought over and now have been common or normalized into Spanish and Portuguese culture. Because a lot of people had to hide their religion. So what it seemed to be is that some people just hid it within words and names.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like we should take this on the road now and just make a history style channels episode show where we're just traveling and talking about true colonialism.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think the thing is right here is like this. When you dig down, you realize that people have traveled, people are people, and they're not discriminative. And there's a history where everybody's involved. Nobody's necessarily has to be the bad guy or the good guy. Shit happened, man. They were bad things, good or bad, but shit happened. Every single place and person, and no matter where you were, went through some type of like bad trauma or just murder or some craziness that happened throughout time, and some of them we don't even have books for and even remember, right?
Yeah, that's what's crazy to me.
Yeah, but it's just like at
How
what
many
point.
stories are not told?
Yeah, I mean history is written by its victors, right. So it's like my point is in general, it's like even when you think about that, when you start talking about United States is another thing where it kind of like most people don't even know about Latin history, right? They don't even know about Latin history. Even some Spanish speakers don't even know about the history themselves on average. They just don't know. It's kind of hidden.
Yeah,
It's interesting to say. It's like you have these narratives, and the reason why people don't really know and it's not so transparent is because it doesn't fit the narratives of these boxes. And so the more boxes you have, the more it I guess you would say the more it creates a foundation for colonialism or supremacy. Because the
yeah,
more boxes you
yeah,
have, the more they're all spread out, and the those who put themselves as supreme or who come up with the rules of supreme, and it's not the average person, right? This leaves the foundation going because as long as you tell this person they're not related to this person, they're not nothing of this person, they belong to this tribe, stay to this tribe, then you separate them by language, you separate them because they don't look like they're part of that or etc. Then the more you'll be able to separate people and divide, and people won't come together. Think about how many people would feel in common if they knew that there was a
I'm
lot of
with that,
Spanish
man.
speakers who were
I'm with that
Irish.
100%.
Right.
Because I understand it's important to call out to get the point across of awareness of if you look around and you're able to acknowledge that something is off, specifically when I'm referring to like a workplace, for example, right? If you're able to look at one team and you're able to identify, okay, there is clearly a dominant white male figure within this team. We need to change something here, right? Calling that out and having that out there is super important. At the same time, being able to address it as the human race, opposed to just continuing to divide lines like you're referring to and have like lanes in like a bowling alley where to me and I've tried so many ways to have a conversation with my wife about this, who's Latina, who has her take on it. But for me, it's just continuing to keep dividers and it's just like I understand that the division I'd naturally think by the way the world is continuing to populate and the more couples become more interfaithful, and just the world continues to evolve through these interracial, interfaithful couples, the future is going to be a more diverse world,
Well, here's the
right?
thing. Here's the thing, though, and I'm gonna interject right here
Hop in,
because
hop in,
here's the
hop in. It's not my
hypocrisy.
yeah.
Here's the hypocrisy of even this type of logic of some sense. At what point is anybody entering another race? Right? If you say, like,
Yeah,
for example, your wife, she's a Spanish speaker, she's Latinas, right? So for her, she's from whatever country, and that's her nationality, right? That she claims heritage to, correct? But that
yeah,
doesn't mean, like, what ethnic racial category would she be technically if she does a DNA test that would fit in with the United States?
yeah.
Does she have does she have she could have some Jewish ancestry, right? She can have some African ancestry. She can have some Native ancestry. She can have some Spanish ancestry. She can have some Norwegian ancestry, right? So at what point is what category? And then when you start looking at a lot of Americans, in general, and especially those of African American, like a lot of those people have different ancestries, of blends, right, throughout hundreds of years, right, in the United States, and the intermixing and everything else like that, in any type of way, right? So it's like, who's entering what at what point? What is the actual enter, right? Is it,
Yeah, yeah,
it's more like intercultural, because what if you have a
yeah.
Jewish great grandfather? Are you interracial, right? And then in general, if everybody's a human race, then there's nothing ever entering. Everybody's exactly the same. But in order to keep this narrative
And
going, to keep the separation going, people are pushed and taught subconsciously at a young age and through school and through society that
yeah,
you're entering
hundred
something.
percent starts in the infant roots.
It's colonialism. You teach it people in school. You teach them through movies. You teach them these things, and people
So
just
do you
copy and
would you?
paste it.
So let me ask you this then. I'm in recruitment. I'm in TA. When I post a job, do you see the future of that if we ever got to a place where those barriers were broken down, of continuing to have those boxes that we just talked about, to where when it prompts you for that question, what do you identify as, and what are your preferences?
So here's the thing, right? Think of it this way.
What are your thoughts on that?
Think of this.
What if that went away and you just
That should be a way. That should be a way. Everybody, but the problem is everybody ready for that? Will people act differently based off of that? People are always going to pick on people for variances, right? Doesn't matter what you look like. But the problem is the variances that people are pointing at are more based off of these ideas, right? Of you belong to a new group, right? Because I can separate anybody based off a group. I can separate somebody who says, okay, red-haired people are the redheaded people, and then only procreate with redheads. And after a while, if you kept on procreating with only redheads, what do you think most of your village or your kids would look like?
they're all gonna be redheads?
Eventually,
Yeah.
eventually, it'd be rare to have. You would have still on and off, but eventually, when it's so much concentration of just only redheads, procreating, what are you going to eventually have? It's just going to consistently, mostly dominantly, eventually just have redheads. And now the redhead people meet with other people with brown hair, and they're like, oh, those are the redhead people. Same thing with a nose. People with bigger
Yeah.
noses just only procreate with people with big noses. And not to pick on anybody with big noses or anything. I'm just choosing like an example.
Hey, big noses,
If
baby.
you
Big
seclude
noses. Big
somebody with
sneezes.
big noses and everybody in the family in that area
Hard to
all
find
have
big
big
tissues.
noses. What?
I said it's hard to find big tissues.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
through
No, it's
isolation
real, dude.
and
It's
through
so real,
isolation and
and
phenotypes.
I mean, our line of thinking though is light years beyond. You're right. If who would be ready for it? And I think our point is that we're in agreement with, or in agreement with, and synergistic with, is it's an archaic system that continues to just push us back. Like, I was talking to my dad about this, and he's like, I don't know where my generation fucked up. Like, when Black Lives Matter, for him, it was just because he's in his job, and he's a 70-year-old. Sorry, Dad, it's out there. Whatever. 70-year-old white male who's been in the healthcare world forever, and he's asking me about, hey, you know, when I was going through the 70s, it was all peace, love, and harmony.
And we thought we were being so progressive. But to see where the world is now, how the fuck did this even happen? And to hear him say that and his generation say that, I'm thinking about the VP in a company who has his HR team knocking on the door saying, we need to figure this shit out right now. We need to change shit right now. That individual who climbed to that seat internally at a company, been there 15, 20 years, let's say 12 years, whatever. They spent their whole career in that one avenue of their job and got so good at it that they continue to climb. Eventually, they found a massive hole in the system. They patched it up, figured out a blueprint. They get promoted. They become, or they founded the company, right? And they only focused on one avenue. If you try to then educate them when they've already mastered the craft and their current role for over a decade, we're talking about centuries and centuries of educating on this systemic issue of where we are today and this imbalance of how to diversify a workforce. And it's, of course, it's going to naturally be seen as a fire extinguisher approach. Because in business, it's all about let's identify where our weaknesses are, let's minimize our efforts, or let's double down on our efforts and let's figure this out and let's move forward.
Right. I agree with you. But I think the thing is difference like this is like, I think even, us being, a part of, the tech world and things like that, it's like you go into these companies and there's this big diversity push. I mean, I've worked at pretty big companies before and I've been to plenty of other companies for interviews and things like that. And, you can see where diversity exists. But, there's two things that kind of plague the industry. There is, how many people of certain groups are interested in tech or even knowledgeable about these opportunities, right? And then who can prepare themselves. There's a shortage of that, A. And then there's also another version where, or I would say not A, I would say one. And then there's another number two, the ones that are qualified or even overqualified may not be getting in positions based off of subconscious biases, right? And that a lot of people don't know because in tech, it is ingrained to, hey, it's not really necessarily hire the best person. It's, refer a friend, right? Refer a friend, refer a friend. And you refer a friend, that person gets in. And then there's also these internal tests that people go through. And these internal tests are kind of set up, for you really kind of, if you've never worked in these big companies, you either have to be really smart and guess them or, B, have a friend that worked in these companies who can help you prepare for the actual test. So,
and by the way, these companies, sorry to cut you off, these companies have the financial bandwidth to create a system in play that gives you a healthy enough ramp up and onboarding system to where you won't struggle. And if you do struggle because the just foundational understanding of your job is just not there because of a lack of resources from your upbringing, then those tech companies are already at an advantage versus other startups. But then the other thing is it's tricky. It's really tricky.
it gets even deeper than that because then even when you start saying to push these type of quotas or whatever it may be, then you have, the others who have, easily benefited off of it who say, oh man, getting freebies, there's people that are more talented that could have gotten these jobs and these people were qualified. So then, the other wasn't necessarily qualified. They just got it because of what they look like. When in general and realistically, a lot of people have gotten their jobs now because of the way they look like or what culture they belong to, because subconscious biases. You don't walk into these tech companies and notice that everybody kind of looks the same and you see the same kind of patterns over and over again and people are helping out their friends. This type of this type of like, support structure, it exists culturally and tribally within these countries. It's just not a coincidence that everybody looks similar within tech companies. It's not a coincidence, man. It is that thing where I can refer a friend. That's one. And then it's the other thing is like, hey, also, of course, what have you studied? Most of certain cultures have studied certain things. So there's a pipeline or consistent stream of that coming in. So it's more of a supply. But then what about the ones that do meet those criteria? They're not going to get in because they're not going to have usually the friend access, the social access to be able to, find out what it takes to actually get hired into the companies. They may have the skills, but the biggest part about getting hired at your biggest companies is being able to pass the test. And if you don't know what the grounds of that test is, good luck.
I do think it's based off the seniority, right? Like there's roles that I cover across the board where it could be. I mean, rarely are there entry level roles, um, where I'm at, but and most of those are through like internship programs,
I'm not even saying entry level, right? I'm saying, if, for example,
mid to
if you're
senior.
going for a
Yeah.
senior position and you've done senior work, but then you don't know how to pass the test, you're not getting in.
Well, that's what my point was about to be. There is a system in place where we're at where it's solely based off of the ability to do the job and going through tests and going through different interview styles where we are assuring that the decision is being best made off of when we close our eyes and we envision who's going to be doing this job from day one with the least amount of ramp necessary, then that's who's getting the job.
So here's the thing. You can never know where that comes from. You can never know where that comes from because that's where subconscious biases kick in. Does somebody remind me of my friend? Does somebody have a similar last name as me? I've literally been in interviews where girls literally told me, "Hey, look, you went to the same school as me, so that's why I chose you."
Yeah, see, that's not honestly like that's just proper. That's improper educate. Like that's just a myth.
A lot of the stuff I'm saying, people aren't 100% aware of it. When
I know.
sometimes people aren't aware of their biases because it's what's familiar, right?
Yeah,
If somebody has a
yeah,
similar, it's not just what somebody's color and different phenotypes are. It's sometimes if somebody has a similar vibe to somebody I've associate with, and that's going to give me my decision basis off of if I also believe confidently they can competently complete this task and how they also communicate this task to the most of the people that work with me. Because culturally, people can
yeah.
explain things in total fucking different ways. You know this.
No, dude, you're spot on. And to add on to that, we don't do a good enough job preparing in college. You have guidance counselors who help do your resumes. They help prep you for job interviews. But what they don't prep you for is drilling in further detail into who you're going to be working with and how they're as the interviewer now. I mean, a lot of companies have proper trainings, right? Not everybody like truly meditates on the information and it absorbs and sinks in, but I know they do have trainings internally. But I would say that, in the example you just used, a lot of a lot of us who graduate, it's not until like 8 years, 9 years into your career, the types of questions to be asking to assure that this person actually sees my value. This person's actually understanding my questions and where I'm coming from. And this team is trying to execute this when I just got off of doing this, but this is what I'm looking for. And this is where they need me. And from day one, we're going to be in parallel worlds, consistently adding value to each other. We don't do a good enough job doing that. But I also, yeah, yeah. No, no, no. I mean, that's pretty much my take on it.
No,
Like,
I agree with you 100%, and
yeah,
that's where I'm kind of going with this overall. It's like there's this weird like thing that happens, and I'm not saying it's just this one exact thing only. It's multiple things that you mentioned where there's this lack of understanding and communication, but then there's also this commonality that exists over
yeah,
preference. Because at the end of the day, we can all raise our hand and say, "Oh, I'm choosing this person because they're the best qualified," but then we have freaking culture fit. Everybody
yeah,
knows in tech we have culture fit. So what the fuck does that mean? What does
yeah,
culture fit mean? So basically, you
yeah.
can work for a
Well, we don't use fit because, and that comes down to seasoned talent acquisition individuals where I'll be honest, there's a stigma where a lot of recruiters they don't there's a stigma that recruiters don't properly educate the hiring manager and partner with them to best understand. Saying keywords like fit, it's not healthy. You're not fitting a piece to the puzzle here. You're seeking an additional valuable asset to the team that we're going to go out and sign like an NBA player who's going to be the next point guard, who's going to take us to the playoffs and then help us win a ring. That's what tech is. That's what efficient tech recruitment slash ad tech recruitment slash and just recruitment in general, when you're able to really partner with the hiring manager, you're able to understand the business needs, and you're able to understand that we're not trying to just be doers on recruitment. We're trying to add value and be the magnetic pole for you on LinkedIn, on these job boards, partnering with local communities and organizations, hopping in the Clubhouse app, like finding different avenues to attract top tier talent to where you could get a true indication of what role you're looking for. Because if I'm able to present somebody who came in from here, which is candidate A, to someone who's up here, which is candidate D, and candidate D has got light years of experience more than candidate A, then that's going to show you the gap of the role that you're actually looking for. And that's going to give you a better indication of how to go about structuring your team out.
Right. I mean, I agree on those things too as well. I mean, I think like everything you're saying, I can't disagree with. You know, it's all touch point. I think where I'm at is like there's just so much subconscious biases that happens within the hiring process that we just don't really even realize it, because that's what the whole point is, being subconscious, right? Our preference is sometimes
Yeah.
subconscious. I mean, I see some people hiring people because, you know, they kind of have a fetish for a girl. You know, we see these
Yeah.
things. We're not stupid, man. Like everybody understands what's going on in Silicon Valley when you work at the top. You know what happens. You can see it. You know, I've heard people say that, you know, I've seen these big things. Like they were talking about this. I think Twitter said they were going to beef up 25% of their upper team to, you know, minorities and things like that, underprivileged people who weren't represented within the company. And I saw a bunch of people whining, saying, well, these people might not be qualified. This is discrimination. Well, here's the thing. Discrimination has been consistently happening in tech since day zero, right? It's just subconscious.
Yeah.
You can't measure it. It's hard to measure. The only thing you can do is do something kind of like, you know, that does not really hard to, it's not really 100% proof, was just like look around and see what the demographics are. And then you can kind of tell, hey, wait a minute, dude, who's in the kitchen? And then who's working next to me?
Yeah. I mean,
who's sweeping the floors? And I'm not saying that everybody, just because of what they look like, automatically means, oh, wow, they deserve the job. You know, no, I'm saying that there's no qualified people. I know qualified people. I've worked with the people that are at the highest companies, and I've worked with the people who are outside of them. And I know that there's qualified people. And there's a lot of positions and jobs within the tech field where they don't require you to be an amazing, you know, where you're not just an engineer. There's different types of different, like what recruiters. There's tons of different positions. There's tons of positions that a lot of people will be, you know, available to get these jobs, and it could be filled them. And a lot of these things, we all have, a lot of your bigger companies all have like onboarding, training, and things like that. You just don't get on and just, you know, 100% of everything, right? It's just, it exists. So why is this oh, you're competent and you know how to do your job better? No, it's not 100% correct. It's just, my whole point, I think, is what I'm trying to say is like, it's really hard to scale and to track that signal of what is the root problem, and is it biases, or is it, you know, hey, I'm really just trying to find the best fit for the company. And I think there's a gray area there. I think there's a gray area, and that gray area is hard to measure. And I think a lot of people don't realize it. They don't realize it. And especially if you're not made to signal to realize it, if you're not made to realize these inaccuracies or these biases, when you're not made to notice that, you might not pay attention. Right?
It's 1,000%. And also, by the way, when you're hiring your leadership team, you got to hold your leadership accountable, but you also have to have the intent. If this is going to be something as the CEO of this company or as the founder of the company, and you truly are trying to implement this type of rollout of a DE&I strategy, who you hire and how they're trained on how to have the conversation and have the open-mindedness to partner with their TA and their HR business partner teams to roll out an efficient strategy to where you thoroughly understand the value that you're going to be rolling out when you're staffing up your team, then that's another piece to this. How many people also just get hired because their companies in the state of, oh shit, we're tripling in size, we need people in now. We don't have the luxury or the privilege to be able to just choose whoever we want and pay the most and max out our salary cap here. We don't have baseball money. We got to get people in the door now, and we got to be able to make this happen ASAP. So I would say that the anybody who's in a senior leadership position at this point has put in over 20 years of work, and the world has changed, and the world is changing faster and at a quicker millisecond than it did when.
I would say it like this, Josh. I would say like
Yeah.
this. I would say it like this. Think of it this way, right?
Yeah.
And I think you have to be a person who has some type of analytical, deep analytical common sense, who can really see things in the outside of the box in a more human way. Ladies and gentlemen, the Kids in the Room podcast. Kids in the Room podcast.
That's right. That's right.
Brought to you by Move Faces TV. Let's go.
Yeah, man, the Britney Spears documentary.
I just don't think it was in our
Go
scope
watch
of
it,
understanding at
'cause
that time
we're-
when she
I
was
just
really
don't think
taking
it
off.
was,
Like, she started
um,
in the mall circuit.
I just don't
and
think
she
it was
started
in
to do
our
performances in
scope
the
of
mall.
understanding
Obviously,
at
she
that
had
time
her
when
Disney
she was really taking off.
foundation
Like she
as
started
well.
in the mall
But then
circuit,
they literally just
and she
said
started
dress
to
up
do
as a schoolgirl,
performances in the
put
mall.
out the song.
Obviously, she
Then
had
from
her
there things just
Disney
went
foundation
skyrocketed
as well.
But then
But
they
I don't want to
literally just
ruin
said,
anything.
dress up
Watch
as
the
a schoolgirl,
documentary.
put out
But
the
what she
song.
went through
Then
is
from
crazy.
there things just went skyrocketed.
But I don't want to
Yeah,
ruin
I
anything.
was just
Watch the
completely blown
documentary.
away.
But what she went through
But
is
the
crazy.
paparazzi,
And how accessible they
and
are
yeah,
to
I was
celebrities.
just completely blown away.
Pandemic-like
But the
scenarios
paparazzi are probably
and
extremely
how
beneficial for
accessible
celebrities
they are
'cause
to celebrities.
you can't be more than 6 feet
Pandemic-like
in front of people.
scenarios are probably extremely beneficial for celebrities because you can't be more than 6 feet in front of people right now, unless you live in Florida or Georgia or Texas.
God bless Texas.
But yeah, man, like I don't know how profiles like Drake, what I was saying, like I don't know how profiles like Drake are able to stay so low key, but then even skipping a beat to then your social identity, Britney Spears has the type of power where she's got if she's got over 5 million followers, then she just says, all right, it's live. At the click of a button, that following will gravitate towards what she's asking them to do. Micro influencers in today's world where you never even heard of Joe Schmo, and Joe Schmo's got like 30K followers and they're verified. How many people that are following him out of that 30K that got him verified are ready to call to action if he were to release or she were to release a shirt that said, I'm a schmo for life? That number is all fluff to me.
Right. No. I agree with you. It's all fluff. I mean, because you don't have that weight. Like somebody like Drake has a lot of weight.
Yeah. But that's the type of data that he, I'm sure, had in his display. Russ right now, I don't know if you see all the videos about Russ, but I'm sure Drake's team has their data so together that Apple was like, you know what? Okay, we're gonna make this investment with you because you have X, Y, and Z ready to go at any given time. I mean,
but Drake's also an anomaly in the industry right now, right? Like his music is amazing, right? I don't know. He keeps on writing.
Well, you're right.
Amazing
You're right.
music.
It comes down to the quality of the music at the end of the day.
It's freaking insane. It's just for our times. There's not really that much good music. His music is probably some of the best. Out of what we hear is mostly noise, and so it's like, Drake is 2000s, and from 2012ish and up, right? I mean, that's pretty much Drake. I mean, he owns this whole time and this whole era. But also, I would say, he also has like a good, cultural balance, right? Being Jewish and then also being African American, like,
Yeah.
and not just a regular African American. He comes from an African American family who were, a big band in the 70s, Sly and the Family Stone.
Yeah.
That's a massive band, right? And and like I even told you, my grandpa, he played with Sly, he sung with them, and then actually Larry and them, they were playing the bass and stuff like that. And that's where my dad, took some lessons up from Larry, who was Drake's uncle. Yeah. So it's a small world. And they were also on the same record label as well, RCA Records. And, their boss basically snorted up a bunch of cocaine and committed suicide. Yeah. He was also Jewish too. Hella cool guy, but I guess he died. but he was actually their
Yeah.
manager. He was their manager for Sly, and then also for my grandpa, and they toured and shit like that. So it was a long-term friendship, and that, I guess, that's how shit happens, man, on the road. So Drake, I feel like, had like a great incubation of like talent and the right people and the right time and the right passion and drive around his family and stuff like that. That all matters, man. You know what I mean? I think everything plays a part. I mean, you see a kid, it's like, oh wow, this kid's talented amazingly, but he also identifies with two massive cultures in the United States. So I think that even helps to add on to his amazing talent. Like, imagine having that with that amazing talent. Like, it's like, shit, dude, sign me up.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. It's light years beyond just having his data and having his packaging together promptly. He is a wrecking ball, and I love him. I mean, he's
Who doesn't love Drake?
yeah. Who doesn't
Unless
love
you have a
Drake?
problem,
Like,
you don't like Drake.
yeah, and you're just hating on him to
Right.
hate. I mean,
You can't ignore
he's
him.
not out there. He's not out there saying I'm gonna outbar your favorite rapper, but he is gonna say I'm the hottest in the game, and rightfully so. But it's because he does it with charm. He does it with charisma. He does it with polishness. You could tell that all of his beats are just handpicked and fine-tuned and tailor-made towards his delivery. Like, the dude is a beast, absolute beast. And
And he only
yeah,
got better with time, man. He only got better with time.
yeah,
And just to reflect, he was just a grassy high actor who was in a wheelchair, and it's just like, holy shit.
yeah. You know what? I feel like in today's world, it's you got to be able to do beyond. Like, you obviously have to have your door and your foot in the door moment entering this entertainment world. Um, whether it's like you're a YouTube star and then you transcend into boxing, or you're a musician and then you transcend into acting, you have to be able to deliver on all variables nowadays. Like, you have to be an entrepreneur as an entertainer. I think you have to, because otherwise it's going to fizzle out so shortly. Drake's positioning with the NBA, Drake's positioning with the battle rap scene, his positioning with Grammys and just songwriting, and like, he knows what he's doing. He
He knows
knows
what
what
he's
he's
doing, but he also has the right people. And he
yeah.
also, I mean, and he's also born the right person. I mean, it's a numerous amount of things that just came in the universe that made Drake who he is. It's not just one thing. You can't point one thing and say that's made Drake. It's numerous of things. I mean, if you also add in the factor of his marketability, right? I mean, imagine if you have a person who's an American kid, but they also, their mom's American, and their father is a Spanish speaker. Those are two different worlds, right? Of languages or of cultures that you can, bounce off of, right? That doesn't matter. That matters. And then not even that, that contributes to your freaking talent, right? Because you have a diverse talent. You listen to, I mean, Drake's listening to bar mitzvah music down to hip hop to Lil Wayne.
Yeah.
That doesn't fucking change things.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's not
Yeah.
gonna influence your music. Come on,
Yeah.
dude. That's not.
Yeah,
That is
man.
not. That is not normal, right? And what I mean by that, and not saying that there's different people that have not listened to bar mitzvah music and hip hop and things like that, but who have seen that culture in depth like Drake did and got to experience
Yeah.
it, and on both sides. That's
And
unique.
had a father in the game already.
Again, you're adding on the layers, and that's what I'm saying. Like,
Yeah.
you add on all those layers, and I'm pretty sure when Wayne and them found him, they saw the stuff that he was doing. They were like, okay, wait a minute. Oh wait, his dad is who? Oh shoot.
Yeah.
And he's what? It all made sense, and then he
Yeah.
had the talent. So when you add everything on top of it, it's the marketability. When you do an artist development, it seems like it was just all there. Drake. And that's what makes Drake's awesome. That's why he's fucking awesome. That's why he's a beast.
Yeah.
And
Is he on
culturally,
your Mount Rushmore though?
oh, what would you say?
Is he on your Mount Rushmore for
He's
musicians of all time?
oh, I mean, dude. I mean, like, I don't think you can go without this whole era. Within the 2012ish and 10ish era, to now. I don't think you can really go and I might have botched those numbers up exactly, but I don't think you can go without this era and not put Drake as the prominent person. You know, it's Drake, and then there's Chris Brown. But I would say Drake is so massive because he appeals to more people more than Chris Brown does. Even though Chris Brown appeals to a lot of people, again, this
Yeah.
is where extra layers start adding on and marketability, and then also
Irrelevancy
and
and
relevance
continuously
and
adapting.
and like we said, people are tribal, man. You know, not many people could dress up like Lil Wayne. You know, certain cultures felt like they can't do that. So, you know, but there was multiple cultures feel like they can dress up as Drake.
I would say this is mine. I would say, I mean, I'm trying to diversify my Mount Rushmore of. We're talking all artistry. We're talking all genres.
You gotta put Michael Jackson of all time for sure.
Yeah, you got to put MJ. Um, but and it's funny because I was starting to only gravitate towards like Snoop has been able to do it, but I'm only thinking of the past 20 years. Yeah, we're talking all time. Yeah, I mean, definitely MJ. I think Drake is up there. Um, I want to say Madonna for sure. Madonna for sure. And then that
David
fourth
Bowie,
one,
come on, let's go.
I mean, Bowie for sure. I mean, I can't say for sure. I can't say. I would say Paul McCartney. Paul McCartney.
Freaking Bob Marley, like, you know, Johnny Cash. You can go on and on. I mean, there's a lot of great artists that have existed within the past, you know, 80 some odd years. So, you know, Richie Valens, you know, I mean, like, there's a lot of great artists that came and gone. You know, Buddy Holly. You know, there's a lot of Frank Sinatra. Like, we can
Yeah.
keep on going. There's a lot of talent going on. You know, you can go. You know,
Yeah.
Frankie
Kurt
Valens.
Cobain.
Yeah, said him already. Yep. Can't forget Kurt Cobain. He was that era of the '90s when it came to rock and alternative music too.
Fred Durst. Chester.
Chester was amazing. Actually, I was actually trying to get their manager on the pod. I reached out to him, Blue, and try to get him on. But I think he's trying to do a podcast himself or something like that. Yeah, I haven't.
You double dip.
Yeah, double
No
dip.
rules of the
Double
podcast.
dip.
What's
Double
the deal
dip.
with the guy who was on Tyson's podcast? I saw that he's on other podcasts now, or he has his own podcast.
Which one, Steve-O?
Not Steve-O. The ex NFL player. He's very cool. He's I really dig his style. He's very deep into like breathing and meditation.
Dougie?
I don't know.
Is his name Doug or Doug?
I don't know his name. I honestly don't know his name. He just talks. He's got a very, very deep voice, and he's super calm and chill and zen.
I don't fucking know.
Go to Hotboxing with Mike Tyson.
I'll look it
You'll
up.
see
I'll
what
look
I'm
it
talking
up.
about.
Right.
Yeah, white dude, beard, tall, jacked. I see him on podcasts all the time. But that my two favorite podcasts, three favorite podcasts right now.
Kids in the Room podcast.
Yours, obviously. Number two, I'm an athlete. I think Brandon Marshall's killing it. He's doing a great job with that. And then Hotboxing with Tyson. It's just Tyson's a real dude. Like he's a real dude, and I just really dig his assertion within. Like you do a great job at really diving into the conversation, but it doesn't sound forceful. Like like it's a conversation. This isn't a Q&A. This is a conversation, and we're naturally just piecing together beliefs and evolving in front of who's going to watch this with us. And that's the value exchange. There's value in every podcast, and that's what I love. I don't want to listen to some bullshit. I want to listen to a podcast that I'm going to walk away from that conversation and be like, damn, that's a good outlook. I never really thought about it like that.
And I think that's what it's about. And that's what I always try to make sure I do. And like how we always talk from the get go is like, you know, I always want to, you know, make people think and open their mind in any way. You know, it doesn't mean everything is an exact fact that I'm saying. I think to say everything I say is exact fact is ridiculous. This is about ideas. This is about thinking. This is about conversating and learning and growing off of it, growing through conversations in unique situations. And I think it benefits two people, and then it benefits the entire world who listens in and who can try to like take bits and pieces out of them, of the conversation, which of course I always want to be positive, right? I always want to help people connect to each other and grow and continue with the oneness, not a divide, when it comes to the workforce and, diversity. I believe in all these things, but I believe also in everybody being one. My whole thing is always about the oneness. All this other stuff where people are pointing and picking out these different variants of things and claiming their little tribes. To me, that shit's senseless. It doesn't make any sense, and I feel uneasy and
Yeah, so you don't
awkward
fuck
when
with
people.
blame. You don't 100%. You don't fuck with the blame game culture either.
I don't fuck with the blame game. I don't fuck with the. I don't fuck with the whole I belong to this thing game, because it's just not reality. Do a fucking DNA test. It's just you're just gonna sound stupid when you look at yourself. And even if you don't do that, everybody's still the same. We all related DNA wise. So what is the conversation about? What's the ignorance about? So it's like, what is the oneness? What is the humanitarian value, right? And outlook. And that's where I see things. I don't see all these little groupings. I can't stand when people start tribalizing things and start, I'm representing the such and such, and we're this and we think like this and da 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 da. I don't like that shit, because it's a divisive conversation, and anybody can experience things that you have experienced. Just because you look like you belong to something else doesn't mean that person didn't somewhat experience that. How do you know that person didn't live or were raised around such and such? They might have experienced those too. They're just divisive conversations when you start tribalizing things and saying this people or my people and all this other crazy shit. I just don't like it. It's an awkward feeling. It immediately divides people. This person can't say this. This person da da da. I don't know. But I'm definitely against the blame culture. But to an extent, there's a difference, right? I'm a little bit weird when it comes to the blame culture. I understand the blame
I'm
culture.
talking about just blaming people.
Oh yeah, for sure. I understand certain people who might have some type of, reference to blame something too. But when you just live in blame and you act in blame and then you act in victim 100% of the time, I mean, it's cool to acknowledge that this shit might have happened because of this or that and that, but you can't sit there and just live in it. You got to fucking keep on going, through adversity.
Well, who's gonna thrive? Who's gonna thrive around you if that's how you're gonna be all the time? If you're the CEO of a company, or if you're the manager of a team, or if you are a partner in a relationship, how are the ones closest to you gonna thrive in an environment of blame? And I always try to point that out. I'm like, it's not me doing that. It's not you doing that. It's shit. I missed that. Okay, we both lost because of that. And the minute that you're able to reverse engineer your mind to, and it's a childish thing that you have, and I'm able to identify as the youngest sibling of three brothers, and that was something that I can remember back to my time of, if I was blamed, I would shy it down and reflect it. But now as an adult, and if you want to thrive in this world, you have to be able to push through blame and spin it into acknowledgement of where the mistake occurred. You don't always necessarily have to call out that it was you, unless it's directed towards you of like, hey, did this happen? Then yeah, own it. And but come up with a solution and be able to thoroughly explain why it happened. Because the minute you're like, yeah, well, this happened because so and so didn't get it over to me, and because of that, so and so was waiting on me, and I had nothing to bring back to them. It's just like, you know what? This happened. I could have got this news out earlier in anticipation. However, the result is we're all affected by it. But moving forward, let's fix it by doing X, Y.
Right. And you're basically coming up with a solution instead of just trying to think about a solution. But I think there's also maturity level of everybody coming to the table to acknowledge that that truthfulness, right? Or that agreement that this is everybody's messing up and etc. And I think that's what happens when you're talking about you even push that into the workforce or in general in life, when you have any type of blame or fault, is that not everybody's willing to come to the table and admit guilt of some sense. It's just
Yeah.
it's very binary. It's your fucking fault, and it's just your fucking fault, and that's just where it's at. And in like kind of we were talking about the job force, with the whole diversity thing like that. It's not a binary kind of a thing. It's really kind of like a weird thing that kind of happened throughout history, and it's subconscious things that are going on. It's a bunch of things that are going on at the same time that are causing these issues. And now it's just like getting everybody to admit, or people who who are in power to admit or to understand how can we try to fix these things. And they have to come into some type of agreement that there is a problem. If everybody doesn't agree that there's a problem, then this kills the foundation of progress, right? I always sit there and say is like, if you look around, one thing that you can kind of measure on is not just look around who's culturally around most of your bigger companies in tech, but you can also go look what's on the menus for lunches. If your company is big enough to have cafeterias, and if you see certain foods that are pushed towards certain demographics, mostly in a company or only solely in the company, you can kind of figure out that these other demographics probably don't live within that company,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people who work at big tech companies know exactly what that means. But there is certain foods that are available, and that reflects the culture or the people who are typically hired within the companies. And
Yeah.
and so if we're talking about diversity, that automatically shows you right there another pattern of there's obviously not this diversity because certain people are eating certain food from certain places that they've never even fucking been to and culturally never grew up into.
Do you even think we have cafes moving forward? Like how? Like, do you even think buffet style is going to be operating after this past year?
I think it's a waste of money because the way we're going right now, right now, it's like, how are we even going to do that? Because if we're thinking about how society is right now with the whole work from home, I think it's cheaper to have it. But I think still a lot of your bigger companies are going to keep offices.
Yeah, I believe that as well. But I mean, just having food open like that, do you think that they? Yeah, I don't know. It's going to be interesting. Yeah,
It's an extra perk to get you to come over. They want the best. It's be the extra perk to keep you over.
yeah. Plus it also provides jobs for the culinary world and the workplace management.
And
Yeah, facilities.
it also adds onto that diversity pool that trying to fill in. You gotta have that diversity, man. You gotta have somebody parking the car, baby.
You need that
You gotta
valet,
get that valet,
baby.
baby.
You need
Yeah.
that valet.
Gotta get that valet. Yeah. You gotta get that valet. Here's my fucking car. Yee.
Hey, here's my keys.
You know what I mean? Like we
Fuck it
do in
up
New York.
front.
You know what I'm
How I like
saying?
it.
This is
Just how
how
I
it
like it.
is.
Just how I like it.
It's exactly. That's how it goes. But no, that is what it is. So I I I agree. I agree. I agree. I agree.
I agree too, man. I agree too.
I agree to fucking
There
agree.
was there was something that you said that I even fucking agreed more on. Not more on, but like more
You agreed with
on.
more like visit. Yeah, got it.
Like more on.
Right. You were
On.
more about that agreement of something I said.
It was about damn. Where were you? Where did you say? It was
We talked about a lot of stuff. We talked about culture. We talked about diversity in the
if it
workforce.
if it's so hard to get to a neutral agreement or understanding, then like how do you defeat blame without an ego? The only way that like obviously the upbringing piece is massive. How you grow up, how you see the world, and if you've only traveled to a handful of locations that are in proximity of your state or your city or your neighborhood that you grew up in, you've only traveled to a handful of places. And then by the time you become 18 and you have to start making this shit, sometimes even sooner, like who knows, there's what life's going to throw at you 15, 16, 18. But when you get to a point where you can live independently and be classified as non-minor anymore, then what is what is blame if how do you eliminate blame if the ego is still there?
I think that's hard because the ego allows us not to take things in. And that's where empathy, kind of like your soft skills, kick in. You need to have that empathy. You have to be empathetic. And I think a lot of people claim empathy, and it's something that, a lot of our companies that we've worked at in the past push for, as far as saying that somebody's highly skilled, as a feature, to look at as soft skill, as like, oh, this person has a strong empathy. That's why I want to hire the best. But it turns out, obviously, a lot of people are lacking empathy, because if you look at how things are made up and structured, everybody's very selfish, and everybody is very egotistical, and everybody thinks they're right.
Which leads to blaming.
Exactly.
It's stem to
Or
blaming.
or denying.
If you, huh?
Or denying.
Yeah, but you're in denial because something is going to be bruised internally that you're too fearful of coming around to a holistic approach around.
Right.
Like my dad said, he didn't become his true self until he dropped his ego. So I've been meditating. I just screenshotted my stats to him. I use Headspace. I had over 27 hours of meditating over the
Awesome.
past 32 days. So that's taking an effort towards dropping an ego. And I don't even think I have an ego per se. I think I have a attraction to material goods that an ego can be still tied to. But in terms of like being a human and being able to have conversations and always have an open mind, I was very fortunate. Like people meet me and they're like, "Why the fuck are you so happy? Like how are the words you're saying coming out of you? Like do you look at who you are and how you sound? Like this sounds too good to be true. Like how are you so open minded and how do you come from such a home of happiness and like and I'm just lucky, man. I'm lucky. I'm a white privileged male in America whose family and parents loved each other. They were on their second marriages each. They both brought children with them, and I was the love recipient and fortunate set of cards that were dealt out of that marriage. And they've they've been able to really pave out an outlook on life for me that has paid off to be extremely beneficial being an adult. That's why I try to make time and make an impact for anybody that I see adding value into my life and me being able to accommodate and add value into theirs. But I also know that's not for everybody. That like not everybody is given that same dose of harmony from day one. So that's why I feel like it's part of my personal objective on this earth to spread that,
Right.
but also be realistic with a lot of the complete opposite upbringings of that being the world looking so positive and unified. So that's my testament to empathy.
Yeah, man. I mean, I think those are all truths. I think those are all truths, and they all touch some points. As far as like the whole privilege thing, I mean, I'm always up in arms with the whole privilege shit, because it's just like everybody's privileged to an extent if they look for privilege. It's just
Yeah.
like overall, when you have light skin, predominant of the time that is considered an overall, privilege when it comes to United States judicial system. And what I mean by that is like the law enforcement and basically more of the benefit of doubt, not really a privilege, but a benefit of doubt, which can in equal some type of privilege. But there's always exceptions to the rule. So not everybody that has light skin is automatically at default privileged, right? I think
Yeah.
it's variant. It's variant. If you can own that privilege and use that to your advantage in life, then you might have gotten that acceptance. But not everybody is able to absorb or manage that. And if you have some other minority who's not light skinned enough, they might be able to take advantage of their expertise and bypass that privilege per se, and be privileged themselves. Now, will that catapult themselves from the legal system visually by appearance? Maybe not, but there's other key factors, because it's about class overall.
Yeah.
It's about class. Class. Complexion is an indicator of colonialism to identify class.
Ladies and gentlemen,
The Kids in the Room podcast.
Kids in the Room podcast.
That's right. That's right.
Brought to you by
Move Faces TV.
Let's go.